The pricing process is a proven way to very efficiently and very accurately value homes and find the market competitive range. Now, what all that means and how easy it is to do, I'm going to show you hand in hand as we walk through this whole process with an example. Now you'll notice this video is going to be kind of raw, so there might be a stumble here and there. There's going to be no cuts. And I'm going to walk you through the entire process of pricing a home, then using the graphs and other kind of accessory information and resources to put together a great CMA and then present that CMA. All uncut and unbroken. So let's jump into it. Now the first step on the pricing process checklist is all about performing your MLS search and exporting that file. Now before we can even get to that step, there's something that you kind of have to do and kind of have to know ahead of time. And that is, what is actually the house? What's the address of the house? Because you have to know some basic information to get the right search. So for today's example, we're going to price a house I used to own whose address was 7012 Pettigrew Street. Now, what you want to do first is go ahead and Google that address. Now, I Googled this and pulled it up on the satellite view because I wanted to look at the actual lot itself. Looking at the lot here, you can very easily see the layout of the actual home, its orientation in the lot, whether it's forward, backward, twisted, an angle, or not. You can see that there's a full fenced yard. You can see that there's a good sized front and backyard. And you can see some other kind of details that are really important when you think about actual home layout. For example, extended patio. Very positive thing to know before you get into pricing a house. So we know this and we now know the layout. The other question you might want to ask yourself, to go back to the map view and say, where does this lay out in regards to the city? You can see here, this is the city of Wellington, and this is on the east side of the highway, where everything over here is on the west. In some areas, certain roads, if you're on the right side, the wrong side, whatever it might be, there's different values or different types of buyers for both of them. And so knowing where that is a very positive thing too. So we've searched it, we've looked at it on Google, saw that it lays out pretty well on the lot, saw that it's in the actual close to town area. It's not somewhere out here, kind of in a long drive to town. It's in a very normal kind of layout area. If I say normal, I mean close to the average, which the average amount of traffic is through here. I don't mean normal as not weird, but normal as far as the actual placement. So looking at that, we have that information. Now we need to know a couple things before we start doing the MLS search. Go into our MLS searching guide. This is a resource that's available in your account, by the way. So is the pricing checklist and a lot of the other things I'm going to show you today. We see that to do the pricing search, we have to know the property type, the neighborhood, and then we can do everything else basically in the MLS. So in order to find that, we're going to pull up the old MLS sheet for that house if possible. If not, you can do property records. In this case, it's easily and readily available. So here is the old MLS sheet. You can see that it's a residential detached, and the subdivision is known as the Meadows. Now, I will say it's the Meadows in Wellington. One thing to note when you do these searches is try and think of the fact that there's probably a similar or close enough to being similar that typo can make it work neighborhood in close cities that might be in the MLS at the same time. So adding that locale of the city name will also kind of give you a little bit more surety that you're getting the right information. So that being said, we're going to come back to some other information on this MLS sheet in a little bit later. But first, you're going to go to your MLS, you're going to do your search, searching for residential detached in this case, for the Meadows for the last 2 years of all activity. Now, we're not pricing against 2 years old data, but we need all that information to create the right patterns. Once you do that, once you've done your search, you're going to export that file and save it on your desktop. Now, I recommend when you do save it, title it correctly. In this case, I did the search already and titled it as the Meadows. So, next thing we're going to do is open the Focus First software and then open that file. So let's jump into that and actually jump into the pricing process. I'll go ahead and open up my Focus First software here. And you'll see when you do so, this window pops up. Make sure you always click Enable Macros. That's what allows the program to run. Make this big so you can see it easy. And then the next thing we do here is click Start here to load that export file. So by clicking Start here, we're going to find that file. Again, I titled it as the Meadows. Now, one thing you might want to do is while you're doing this, by the way, is make sure you're really good about where you're saving this file. I saved it to my desktop. Many times your computer will automatically save it to downloads. So make sure you do keep track of where it gets saved. That way you can open it easily in this dialog box versus trying to find it for, God knows how long. So this opens up. I'm going to go ahead and keep this title as The Meadows in Wellington. Click Done. And once I've done that, it will automatically first actually take me to the real estate reviews page. Now, if you're doing real estate review, you're done at this point. This is all you really need to do. But in this case for pricing, so let's jump into answering some of these key customer questions. So we've accomplished this now of opening the file in the software. Now we're going to move into finding the value based on recent sales as well as look at some neighborhood patterns. So jumping back to the program here. First, we're going to click on patterns. These are kind of laid out as step 1, 2, and 3, so just go ahead and you can kind of stick with that as well. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see it a little bit easier. You can see here, this is the odds of selling for this neighborhood. 96% is ridiculously good. This is a fantastic news for you. It means that this neighborhood is very favorable, that people want to move there. You can see 24 properties have sold, 1's under contract, 1 didn't sell in the last year. There's 0 months of inventory and 2 houses are selling a month. This is fantastic. Great news for you trying to price this house. Looking at the time to sell, the average is 45 days. That means if the average contract is 45 days long, this is the average time to close, then that means it gets listed, goes under contract, and closes in 45 days. That's awesome. And looking at that, we did this search in February, 45 days. You can see that if we listed the house today, we would be right in this super powerful buying window. This is when there's the most activity historically for this neighborhood. So that's a great sign as well for selling this house. All great information to know, and it's actually information we'll use later when we get to positioning to help guide us whether or not we can be aggressive or not. But let's first try and find the base value. So click on pricing, and there's one little tab down here called PRCgram. It automatically creates a scattergram for you. So this scattergram here looks pretty great. Now there's cases where you might have way too many dots on here. You may have to go back and change some things. If you have to do that, click on the MLS data or click on pricing to bring you back here. The first thing we recommend doing is filtering out the data that's a different type of house. 2-story versus ranch, for example. If you do that and you get yourself whittled down to more accurate data, you're good to go. If you still have too much data, then we'll start kind of expanding and looking at saying, hey, let's just look at the last 3 months sold. The standard is the last 6 months. You might be shrinking that a little bit because you might have just too much information. But in this case, we lucked out because this is the right amount of information. We really want to see like 7 to 10 dots, which are, these all represent houses that have sold. So this works out really great for us. So the next step we want to look at is, what is this helping us decide as the actual value based on recent sales? So in order to do that, we're going to jump back to the old MLS sheet, and we're going to use a couple things. First, though, we're going to use is this total square footage here. So total square footage is 3376. So jumping back to our program, and obviously you could do this on multiple screens. I'm trying to do this on one screen so you can see all this at once, and you might have the MLS page on the desk in front of you so you don't have to jump back and forth like this. I recommend actually printing out the checklist for the pricing and recommend printing out the searching guide so you're not doing what I'm doing right now. But I want to show you this actually live and in person. So jumping back to here, at that 3376 mark, we'd be right around this line. So we're going to intersect this trend line right around here. Now let me just draw a little line here for you. I wouldn't recommend you doing this. Actually, during the presentation phase, we're going to talk about how you're going to have a customer do this so that you can kind of make this their choice, their decision, and their interaction. But I'm just going to show you this so you can see where I'm pointing at. This is where that actually intersects the market value trend line. So this fair market value trend line is a good starting point. Now the next question though is, you can see this one's right in the middle of the line. This one's a little bit below, and those are the two closest dots to us. The main thought you should think here is figure out where it intersects the line, then look at the dots that are approximately close to it, they're in close vicinity to it, or the dots, by the way, these are all just sold properties. I just use them as dots because they're clearly dots on the graph, so it's just easier to speak it that way. When you talk to your customers, you'll say these represent homes that have sold, so this home that sold, this home that sold, not dots. So just remember that as best you can. We want to look at the homes that sold, or the dots that are close to where you intersect the fair market value line, and you want to look at ones that are way off the line. So for example, this is a little off the line, a little off the line. This is a little bit more off the line, but this one is way above the line. So we want to know what's going on with all three of those. So the first thing we want to do is figure out this outlier here. Why is this one so far off the line? So this one here, if you hover over the top of it, we'll pull up the information. You can see that it's 2978, and that is the square footage. So we can go back to the MLS data sheet. Looking at the properties that are selected, you see the boxes here. 2978 is this 6925 Mead Street. So you're going to go into your MLS, and hopefully you still have your search open and results open, and you're going to open up the MLS sheet for that property. Now, here it is. You can see it's a ranch-style house. They have a 3-car garage, but as we read through the rest of this, you figure out as well the basement has been finished, has a wet bar, has an additional bathroom, another bedroom, and an office downstairs. So that's pretty massive to see that a finished basement pushes it above the line. That makes perfect sense. Now the other properties on here that we want to take a look at are this one here at 3342 and this one here at 3528. So these are the ones that are the closest to our house. So let's look at those and see how well we match with them. Now, again, 3528 is this one here, is Langland. And then the other one at 3342 is 6900 Sumner. So, pulling up those MLS sheets, looking at Langland, you see it's a 2-story house, 3-car garage. And you can see that it has 5-piece master bath, 3-car garage, unfinished basement, and a large patio in the back. Okay, that's awesome. As you kind of scroll through, you can read more things about this. You can see that it has an enclosed fence area, which means that the backyard is fully enclosed fencing. Also a very positive thing. So this one's on the line. This is the one here. Jump back here. At 3528, so this one's basically right here on the line, smack dab in the middle of that fair market value line. So what that's telling us is to be right at that fair market value line, probably looking at a 3-car garage and a fenced yard. Okay, so this one's below. So my first instinct reaction is it's missing one of those things. It either doesn't have a 3-car garage or doesn't have a fenced yard, which are both major moving points, especially in Colorado, where we love to have dogs and like to let them outside. So let's now look at 3342, which was that Sumner address. So going to the Sumner MLS, you can see here it has a 3-car garage. It is a ranch-style home. Okay, walk-in pantry, upgraded other things, cool. As we come down here, what you'll notice is there's something missing. Okay, and this comes to you as a real estate agent. This is what you kind of want to be able to get knowledge and get comfortability with your MLS sheets. But you can see there's no fencing listed here. So it is missing that fenced-in yard. So that's what's pulling it down below that line. So that being said, we can probably say, hey, this is down below the line, no fenced-in yard. This one's right on the line, 3-car garage, no fenced-in yard. What do we have? Go into ours. We can see we have a 2-car extended garage. So it's a little bit not the 3-car garage, not a full 2-car garage. So net a little bit lower. And then it's not listed on here completely, but it is a fully fenced-in yard as well. So that all being said, I know that because it was my house, but I knew that I had to actually finish the fence before I could sell the house because of this information that I knew ahead of time. So that being said, we're going to be maybe a little bit below the line. But what that means is, if you think about being a little bit below the line because we have a 2-car garage, we're going to probably be right around here, which would probably be about, let's say, $485,000 to be as accurate, as we need to be. Now, what most people would say is they stop here. $485,000, that's what you should price at. Cool, bing, bang, boom, put it on the market, we're good to go. That is not the right mindset. That's where a lot of real estate agents and real estate pricing actually fails. They find price per square foot and they call it good. But what you need to do is kind of take into the mindset of the buyer and take in the mindset of what else is out there in the market. So, we now have found the value based on historical recent sales, but we're not stopping there. This is only step 3. So the next step is establishing the competitive window. Now, in order to illustrate this, I'm actually going to go ahead and open up our Focus First PowerPoint CMA template and scroll down to a slide that helps you teach this to your customers. Now, you'll see this again in a second when I put this whole CMA together, but going here, this slide is a great way to show that and really talk over, because when buyers look for a house, they're not necessarily just looking at one specific price. They're looking at a range of prices. And in many cases, when they're looking on Zillow or any kind of other MLS listing, they don't search for small numbers. They don't go by 488 to 489. They don't go in these small jumps. In Zillow, for example, I'm pretty sure the smallest jump you can go is 25 or 50,000 as far as ranges go. So what that means is you're going to be seeing houses that compete in certain ranges. And there's certain ranges that tend to be more popular. Now, what that means is you want to try and find what other houses you're going to be competing against if a buyer is looking at it. So if a buyer is looking at a certain range, in this case, 500,000 to 450,000, you're going to be competing at homes that are priced at 450,000, and you'll be competing at prices around 500,000 if you list at 485. So we want to see what the competition is, see what the market condition is, and see what that means for us. So 450 and 500,000 are both very kind of common numbers. That's why we're going to select that as our competitive pricing window and see what kind of competition we have there. Now, you could probably stretch this even further and go 400 to 500,000 if you wanted to, but we're going to go ahead and hone in on that 450 to 500, because you can see that in this example alone of houses that have sold, there's a pretty good number of dots that are here, which means that a lot of homes are going to be in that area probably when we go to talk about what's for sale. So now that we know our competitive pricing window of 450 to 500,000, we're now going to do our competitive pricing window MLS search, export that file. So jumping back to this guide, we're going to search for that same property type, residential detached. We're going to search for comparable locale this time. So not neighborhood, but where would a buyer be searching that our house would show up in their search? So in this case, we are going to search for the whole town of Wellington. So Wellington, the last 2 years, all size activity again. Again, we just need that information to make the right pattern calculations. And then we're going to search for the price range of 450 to 500,000. You're going to do that in your MLS. Once you're finished with that search, you're going to export that file, and we're going to load that in the official pricing system. So let's do that now. Click here to upload the price range data. Now in this menu, we're not going to use a neighborhood distinction. Instead, we're going to type in, I'm going to type in 450K to 500K, and it's in Wellington, so that's correct. You can see here, these are all the houses that have gone up for sale, that are for sale, that either under contract or still active. And you can see here that the pond shows us market momentum. So you can see that it currently favors sellers, and it also shows us future competition. It does that by predicting 11 homes will sell in the next 90 days. So the next 3 months, 11 homes will close. Now, 8 are currently under contract. What that means there's 3 more remaining that still have to kind of either go under contract or show up and then be bought. There's 2 that are right now on the market that are for sale but under contract. And there's 9 homes predicted, potentially including ours, that are new coming into the market in the next 90 days. What that means is there's going to be 11 homes fighting for 3 buyers. So that's not 100% in our favor, but if we price correctly and get in the eyes of multiple buyers, we'll probably be one of those homes that sell. So now we have opened the competitive price export file with the positioning data upload button. We've looked at market momentum, the area desirability we saw earlier in the odds of selling, and the market timing we saw with the buying pattern. And now we just looked at the future competition based on the numbers on that pond as well. Now we're ready to move into establishing market value through competitive positioning. In order to do that, we're going to go back to the positioning here. I'm going to open this up, which is the POS or Positioning Gram. Now looking at this is pretty amazing. There really is nothing, and I mean nothing, available for sale anywhere near square footage. Everything's under contract. That is a great sign. Now, in many cases, there would be a couple active over here, and then we have to really competitively position. Now, with competitive positioning, what we end up doing is looking at a potential sale price and then saying, okay, do we have an advantage or a disadvantage? An advantage comes from having more square foot at a lower price with the same condition, amenities, and special features. And a disadvantage comes from having less square footage at a higher price with the same condition, amenities, and features. So you have to look at that and kind of compare that. Now, you always want a competitive advantage. And I know it's kind of an overspoken statement and maybe a little bit of a reach, but the reason I say that is if you're in a market like we have here, where it's going to be 11 homes fighting for 3 buyers, and you end up tying with another property. Let's say you have more square footage for less price than the other property, but their features are nicer. So realistically, a buyer looks at the two and it's kind of a tie in their mind. You're leaving it to a coin flip of whether or not you're going to be one of the homes that sell. That's not the greatest way to do it. The greatest way to do it is put yourself in a competitive advantage so you don't not only just get that offer from that buyer, but every buyer that sees all these different homes, you have the advantage, you're the value, and they want you. And now you have multiple buyers fighting for you, which end up pushing your value up. That's kind of the way to approach it. Now in this case, it's a little bit different because there's no competition. Right? We're in a place where there is literally no one here to fight. So there is no actual competitive advantage situation for us to look at. Now that being said, we don't necessarily skip this step. We now just jump to the next step and say, hey, we have competitive advantage no matter what because there's no competition. So our market value is still kind of all over the place. Now, we originally said $485,000, which some people might say, let's just stick with that and make sure we appraise. It's always a great option. That being said, you're probably gonna get some offers and push yourself up anyways, and appraising at list price is always a great offer with that too. Now, looking at the competition, however, we can also start looking and thinking about something different, which is what we call bridge pricing. So pricing on a bridge is where 2 buyers' searches overlap the most. It's where you get the most opportunity to capture new buyers. So there's certain bridges that are super powerful. Like I said, think about Zillow or think about even our competitive range. Not a lot of people are searching 476,500 to 482,100. No one types that. They're going to use the brackets or the ranges that are there. So if you're thinking about 25,000 at a time, realistically, you're going to be finding people that are searching from 475 to 500 and then 500 to 525. And that 500,000 mark is a great overlap. Now, you'll find people going from 450 to 475 and things like that too. But realistically, that 500 is a great bridge price. Now, you might be thinking, did you just say 500,000? Yes, I did. Now, the reason why I'm saying that could be a great possibility is you look at this, there's no competition. The pond is leaning toward us. The patterns show that we are super desirable and we are coming right into the sweet spot of our buying window. That means that we can push a little bit more and be a little more aggressive. Now, if you're a little nervous about that, which makes perfect sense, you can look at these dots here. These are all selling at 495 and above. So 495 and above, is there anything unique about those homes that we can maybe compare ourselves to? Looking at that here, I'm going to double click on this list price so that sorts by the actual price. So all those high prices, 500, 500, 495, 495, and 494, 4 are under contract, 1's for sale. Look what's unique, they're saying the same about those. Those are all the ranches. People want ranches in this neighborhood right now. So this is the only one that's not selling, but you can see that's significantly smaller. That's 1,300 square feet. Anything that's around this 3,000 square feet and is a ranch style house is selling at 495 or above. So even though you might have seen 485 on the other graph, you might be willing to go higher. Now, this is the great part about this. Why do I keep saying you might want to? You might be willing to, or you might recommend that. This is where the kind of like the line gets drawn. You don't choose the price, your customer does. So what I want you to do here instead is show this information, teach it the way that I just taught to you when you present it, and then have your customer decide. Do they want to be at the 485, kind of more of a safe, lower number? Do they want to go in the 490 to 495 range and kind of, be in the middle of this? Or do you want to go to 500, try the higher, go to this bridge, and really kind of put yourself in a position where you're going to be reaching a bigger market but it's going to be a little bit higher and a little bit more possibly kind of a situation where you're working with a buyer versus having multiple offers then bringing you up. That's kind of the recommendation I would say is let the buyer decide. Either price low and let competition bring the market up, or price a little higher and let's look for that one buyer that really wants it. Okay, so what that comes down to is you recommend that, then you ask the customer, with all this information, where do you feel comfortable listing at? Now their motivations will change where they want to list at. For example, if they need to sell fast and they need to get, need some security so they can buy the next house, they might choose a little lower. If they're okay waiting for a little bit and being like a little bit more cautious or making sure that everything gets fixed up, or having a professional clean their house, or having professional staging versus having their own furniture, maybe that $500,000 makes sense. It comes down to where they're at and what they want to do. So this now, though, we have found a great range from $485,000 to $500,000, where you're going to be pretty accurate no matter what. And you're probably going to still be listing offers and sell. Now, that being said, I want to make out one really kind of strict point here, just so you just know this. When you look at Z estimate or any kind of online things, the best I've ever seen was a 10%, but most of them are 20 or more percent plus or minus guarantee on the sell the house. Zillow for a while was buying houses and selling themselves, but now they can't predict the market enough, so they stopped doing it. Okay, so I believe that they were at 20%. I could be wrong about that, but if you're 20% off on a house that's priced around $500,000, you're $100,000 off. If you're 10% off, you're $50,000 off. That is a huge gap. What you just did here in a very quick manner is we just found a $15,000 range that realistically, no matter what, it's probably going to end up selling around the $490,000 to $495,000 after concessions or after a bidding war. So the worst case scenario was we're $5,000 off. That is crazy accurate, and that's really awesome to see. Now it comes down to your service as a real estate agent to get them the most value they can. Okay, so now we've gotten to this point. We have followed the pricing process checklist. We've looked at the listing pricing to best share offers at around market value. So whether that be pricing lower and getting a bidding war, pricing higher to get more of a bridge position, we're in a great sweet spot. Now we have to put this all together in a beautiful CMA to lead your customers through the whole understanding of the market, and then let them make that decision. So let's build that CMA with all the stuff that we just looked at in it so that they can do that. So jumping back to our CMA template. Now this is just the blank CMA template. Here you're going to go ahead and add your, for example, headshot photo. And then you can go ahead and add a logo here. We're going to type in the address. And then you type in the city, state, zip code, who you're preparing it for, when you did it, and your agent information. I'm going to skip over that now because I think you can understand that part. We're just going to go page by page through this really fast. That's the beauty of these resources. They are ready for you. Oh, before I go further, I should always say, I always recommend saving this as the address you're about to price. Don't accidentally save over your actual template. Save a new one each time. That way you can make any changes you need to without losing that resource. If you do ever accidentally overwrite it, though, you can just go back to focusfirst.com, log into your account, download the resource again. So, but the second page here is table of contents, title page about key information about your house. Replace this with the Google Maps look from number one, the map. So again, we Googled this, looked at where it was in the city and where it sat from the satellite view, actually in the lot and neighborhood. So what you're going to end up doing is going back to here. You might do this in the first place. You can go here, and you're just going to screenshot this or take a picture of this on your computer, or just print this out if you want to and put it in there. Again, I'm doing this on a computer so I can show you the digital CMA, but you can always just print this CMA template out and then replace these blank pages with the pages that you printed from the actual graph and from the actual software. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to go ahead and just replace this by selecting that and deleting it. We'll get rid of this empty box. I'm going to insert the map image that I had printed out. I don't need anything with design ideas, thank you. Same thing with this guy. I can open up and insert the satellite photo. Here I'm going to put that older MLS sheet that we had, or property record screen grab if you need to do that. I'm going to insert this guy here. And if you want to, you can leave it this way, just so that it's the same orientation to read through, or you can turn it and make it bigger. I'm just going to leave it this way, just because that way it's the same orientation as we go through the presentation. Now, the next part of the CMA, and I'm going to explain why we're doing this in this order when we get to presenting it. But the next thing we're going to add in is the appreciation of the area. This is the FHFA graphs. Now, we need both the statewide and the nearest MSA or city. Now, where do you find these? They're in your account. So if you go and log into your account and focus first, what you end up doing is going here, clicking to the FHFA appreciation graphs, going to your state, clicking on the state appreciation, and then click download to download them. Same thing with the city on that same drop-down menu. In this case, for example, Wellington doesn't have its own city one. The closest one is Fort Collins, because that's actually pulling that data in. So I'm going to click Fort Collins, and here's that, and download that. So once we've done that and download those, we're going to put those in the CMA here. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff you're going to do once and just kind of keep, and then you'll be good to go. And I actually forgot to click download, apparently. But once you do download them, for example, these FHFA graphs are updated quarterly, so you won't really need to constantly go back and download them like I just did right here. It's one of those cases where you download them once and you'll be good to go. You can save them into your template if you kind of do most of your business in the same state or the same city. Then you can go ahead and do that, and that's pretty easy to do. Otherwise, again, I'm doing this live for you right now, uncut and, I don't want that twisted like that, uncut and unstopped. So any little hiccups I have or random things like I just forgot to save that before, you're seeing it live. So it's taking a little bit longer than it normally would, but again, we're doing it together, so that's what I wanted to do. Odds of selling graph, we're going to insert here. So what we're going to do is go to your Excel, go back to here. Now, you can either print these graphs in person and stick them into the bound paper version by clicking Print Graphs and selecting the graphs you want to print. If you're on PC, you can do that, and then it'll open up the print function. In Mac, it doesn't quite work that way, so you have to do each one at a time. So I'm just going to do this in a time, save these as PDF, and I'm just going to title this as odds. Go to time to close, print this, save this as time to close, and then go to buying pattern, click print, click save as PDF, and save this as buying pattern. I'm going through this fast because if you're a Mac user, you know how to do this. If you're a PC user, you're going to most likely use this function here by clicking print graphs, select which ones you want. Then when you click OK, it'll open your print function. You can either print on your printer or through your PDF. So I'm just going to run through this quickly just so I can get this all put in here well. I already deleted the text here, but it said to put the odds in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow the instructions to the CMA, put the odds in here. Replace this with the time to sell graph. If I can find it, time to close, pardon me, time to close graph. Oops, I forgot to delete that. And if you needed, if you didn't worry about this actual click to add title thing, that won't actually show up, but I'm just going to delete it so that it looks good on the computer right now. And then we're going to add the buying pattern graph here. Awesome. Again, following down the steps of the CMA template, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain why these are all in this order as we get down to it. Now, when you get to searching in your MLS, it's optional, but one thing we do sometimes recommend is adding a map of the data that's getting included. So when you look at the map of sold properties, for example, when you search for your data for the first pricing amount, you can look at the map, and then sometimes it's nice to go ahead and include that to show where the activity has been in that city. In this case, I did that, and you can see that in this neighborhood, I mean, it's pretty overall sparsed out. And sometimes you'll see it in one area in particular if there's something that's causing that sale to happen, but in this case, it is pretty level. So Now we're getting to the actual CMA stuff. Getting back to what we did, we're going to replace this with a base scattergram. What I mean by a base scattergram is the one that we actually have right here. Now we don't want these little lines on it. We just want this basic one that we started out with, right? The one that started that thought process and that conversation for us in our own minds of, okay, we are here. What are these dots doing? Why are they close to the line? And why is this one way out here? So we're going to have this base scattergram graph first. So again, I'm going to go ahead and print this and save this as base scattergram. Again, this is the longer version because Mac kind of makes us do this. So that's the base scattergram. Going to do this. Going to go ahead and insert this picture from file, which is the base scattergram. There we go. Beautiful. Now, the next here says to replace with a detailed scattergram. What do I mean by detailed? What I mean is all that thought process we went through regarding whether or not those houses should be close to the line or far from the line or why this guy was way up here. We want to have a scattergram that shows that and tells it very easily so we can present it to our customers without having to flip back to those MLS pages. So what we're going to do that is go back to our pricing. And we're going to select those three properties that really were the ones we were kind of examining before. So if you remember, it was this one here at Mead. And we're going to click anywhere in there. Sorry, that dialog box keeps popping up. It won't pop up in yours. I'm using an experimental version here that's, just keeps showing that up for some reason. So it doesn't affect any issues with the program, just it's showing up on mine. It won't show up on yours. But click here on Mead, click select. The other ones that we were looking at was this Langland property here and Sumner. So I'm clicking select on all those, and you can see these boxes down the side are filling in. What it's letting me do is add text boxes to them. So in order to create the graph with the text boxes, I'm going to click Create Graph Options, Create Graph, and then this here allows us to select what we want to show up in the text boxes. So let's say we want to show the address, the style of the house, how big of the actual lot was, bedrooms, bathrooms, garages. Let's go ahead and say the year built. Now in this case, it's not as pertinent for year built because they're all about built around the same time, but there's some neighborhoods where the year built, some are older, some are newer, and they have huge dividing lines in value. But in this case, let's just go and do that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and keep both. What that allows me to do is keep that base scattergram and now have this detailed one. So we have this detailed one, and oops, I forgot one thing. Yeah, I'm doing this live, so I'll make mistakes. It's okay. Go back to here, create graph again, and make sure to click the Show Trend Fair Market Value line. That's why that one didn't show up before. Now we have what we want. We want that trend line still in there. Now we have these text boxes, but you can see they're kind of jumbled in on each other. So I'm going to click not once, but click twice to enable us to move them. And click when your thing shows the little four arrows. There we go. Drag this over here. Click on this guy. You can see they have little leader lines that kind of connect to the dots that allow us to move them around and still have them show up. So we looked at this in the past. Why was this above the line? If you remember, this had the finished basement. This one was right on the line, 3-car, 3-build, and it also had a fenced yard. This one, however, did not have a fenced yard. No fenced yard, which are the main distinguishing points we had for those. So now we have a detailed graph that we can kind of talk with customers and really explain why this one was on the line, why this was below the line, and why this one was so freaking high. Now, we might want to add here just to make sure that we are consistent of a fully fenced yard. Because it has fenced yard and a finished basement, which is why I went up that high. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save this now as our detailed scattergram. And then go ahead and insert it here into our CMA. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to talk about the competitive price range window to customers. Now we do the search for that. Now we have, in our MLS, when we search, we're going to have a map of homes that are for sale and active. Again, I didn't show this earlier, but when you do that search, it's always probably a good idea to take that map image just to be able to show them where the houses are for sale. Some people like to drive around and see what they look like from the outside and kind of do that. Other times, it's good to see if it's all in this case, oopsies, on the west side of the highway or on the east side of the highway. You can see it's pretty well distributed on both. So this is the actual list of the homes that are for sale. I'm going to add in the Pond 2.0 graph, which the Pond 2.0 graph, go back to here, is under positioning. And you can see Pond 2.0 right here. This is the one that allowed us to predict future competition, find market momentum, and all that. So go ahead and put Pond 2. And I'm jumping back and forth a lot. You can probably do all this at once. Just print all these, save all these, and then you're good to go. But I just want to show you that where each of these goes individually, piece by piece. And here we go. It's put in there. Now we got to this guy. Replace with the base positioning scattergram. All right. So again, it's going to delete this. Go back to my program. Go to my positioning. Go to my positioning scattergram. And go in and print this guy. Now, what's interesting about this pricing property, position, is, again, in most cases, you have to do competitive positioning to really put yourself in an advantage point and then look at pricing on the bridge. Again, remember, we don't really have competition that much here because everything's under contract. So we're in a little bit of a unique situation. So the next slide really talks about competitive advantage and why you kind of do that. Pardon me for 1 second. It's a long video, it's uncut, a little bit of water. Okay, so what we're doing here is talking to the customers about competitive advantage, but in this case, since there isn't any, we don't really have to have another graph talking about that. So instead, what we want to do is really just jump to, and this is where normally we would have an extra graph with a quadrant layout, which let me show you how to make that really fast. Normally you come back to here, you come to positioning, and you would add a user property. Right, and we're going to add that address as a subject property, and then add the square footage and where we think we're going to price at. So let's say we're looking at that 485 range. When we do that and go to create graph options and create a new one, we're going to click here saying show positioning quadrants and show value boxes. Now doing that, I'm going to keep both. I'm going to show you the difference here. We'll add this little red dot here. That shows us where that really kind of shows up. Right now, again, this is a case where you'd be tied competitive advantage-wise down the left quadrant and the top right because it's less square footage but less price. Top right would be more square footage, more price. And then over here, there's less space for more price, so we have a competitive advantage over everything that we put in this quadrant. We have competitive disadvantage over everything that's below here that's bigger and smaller price, assuming the conditions, special features are the same. But in this case, we already have a competitive advantage because there's just no other competition. So that's a case where we, in this instance here, there's not really a need to add this quadrants graph. Now, we still could add this if you wanted to show them that quadrants and explain to them what was going on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now here just to have that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my, here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of the text box because I just don't really need it in this case. And I'm going to save this as my detailed position. Insert picture from file, detailed position, and here we have it where we're talking about where we were thinking before, but now you can see that there's no real competitions. We're in an infinite competitive advantage. Now the discussion comes to pricing on the bridge. Now we're going to talk about that with the customer, look back at this graph, ask them where they believe they should be, and then we're going to write that in there. So now you can see the CMA is completely built. So obviously you have their name here, and at the very end, when it comes to this sheet, you're going to go ahead and put that address in here as well. But now the CMA is built and is ready to be presented. So we've gone through the entire pricing process checklist here. We did our MLS search, we exported that file, we opened the file in the Focus for software, we found that value. We established a competitive range to imagine ourselves from a buyer's perspective. Where are they looking? We did the search based on that window. We opened up that active data. We looked at market momentum, area desirability, and market timing, and we projected future competition. And now we know where we're at. We found market value through competitive positioning, and we've established that we could probably either price a little bit lower and go for a bidding war, or price higher and try and hit that bridge. But that's where we're kind of in this point. We have two different spots. We have the kind of the lower spot that's the best to trigger multiple offers, and the higher spot is the best to trigger more potential buyers. Now we have the point we're going to print all these CMAs, compile them in CMA Template, done. Now we can add in all these MLS sheets we saw at the back here by adding new slides, adding blank slides, and then adding that in. So for example, if we wanted to add those in, what I'm going to go ahead and do is insert this, insert the other MLS sheets we used, specifically the ones we looked at. We looked at Mead, which was the one that was like way over the line. Then go here again. Let's add 2 blank slides just for the other ones. Sumner and Langland. And these are just great appendix things to have in there so that if people do ask about, well, can I see that MLS sheet, or can I see what it looked like from the outside, or things like that, you're going to do that and have that kind of show up. And so that's really kind of where we're at. So the CMA is ready to be finished being put together. It's ready to go, and now it's ready to present. So to finish this long video, I'm going to go ahead and just present this to you as if you were a customer. Now, this is going to be a very kind of abbreviated version. Obviously, they're going to be asking questions. You're going to have much more pauses and have a little more discussion. But let me just run through how this goes so you can kind of get a good gist for it. Okay, so this is your real estate competitive market analysis. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure you understand something that's really important about this. Most real estate market analysis, when you hear the word CMA, is all about being comparative. Now, as you know, most buyers out there really are seeing multiple homes. So competitive market analysis is looking at the competition and making sure that you're in a position for the right buyer to put in the right offer to get you the most value. So I'm going to lead you through this whole process, and we're going to really kind of delve in together as we arrive at the price that you feel most comfortable with and that we know is the right market price to get you where you want to go on time. Sound good to you? Great. So here's our table of contents. This is where we're going to walk the path down together today. We're going to look at the information about your house. That's really the key information for what buyers are looking at. Now, I know that there's a lot of things about your house that you love and that you can probably sell better than I can. But there's some basic information that we can kind of predict buyers' experiences off of. That's where we're going to start off here. When we get to all the other details, all the beautiful things you've done in your house and design, we'll have that and make sure it's part of the marketing material. And there's a couple key things we're going to look at. So we're going to look at those first. Then we're going to look at the bigger picture, looking at the state, our local area, and then zero in on your neighborhood and then your home particularly, and then look at the competition. So let's start here by looking at your house. So first here, this is just the map view of your home, kind of showing where it lies in the city. As you can see, it's highlighted here with the red dot. And I mean, I'm sure you know this, you've probably driven this a lot. But again, just getting a good picture, this is where you lie in the city, and you can see that this is yours. Now this here is the satellite image from above of your home. Did you think your house looked like this from above? Looks pretty good to me. But this here can show us the way it lays out and the way that customers will see this when they Google it online. So we can see sometimes if we need to do any kind of fixing, but to me this looks great, and they can very easily see the extended patio that you have and everything. This is your old MLS sheet, and the important thing we want to look at from this, obviously you've made changes, you've made updates, and you've done a lot of things to your house. But when it comes to searching for buyers, what they're going to look at are a couple things. First, they're going to look at the subdivision here, the square footage, and then a couple of other things like garage spaces and some of the other upgrades that you do have based on the public records. Now, again, this is the starting point. When it gets to marketing your house, we're going to make sure they know about everything you did. But looking at this and knowing this, we now know that the neighborhood is called the Meadows, and we're looking at the city of Wellington. So let's look at the big picture and see what you can expect from your home value increase-wise. Well, in the state of Colorado last year alone, we had a 15.5% increase. That is phenomenal. We're averaging over 6%. Now, that's the state of Colorado. We're doing really great. And you bought your house, I believe, in 2020. So you can imagine you have compounding added together value here of over 26% increase. Did you know you had that much value, most likely? Well, that's Colorado. You're correct. Now, looking at Fort Collins, it is a little bit less. But you're still looking at around like 20% increase. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that you only had 20% increase. That doesn't mean you only had 18% increase. I mean, what this all comes down to is this is appreciation for this area. You can see it says Fort Collins, Loveland. That's including all of Fort Collins, all of Loveland, and Wellington. So this is a great view and a great way to look and kind of expect some things. But what we want to do is really narrow down your area to see if your area outperforms the rest. So let me ask you, when you think about your area, are you seeing a lot of homes for sale? Now, I'm sure you've seen some homes that went for sale and didn't sell. So let me first address the first question, the first kind of fear that sometimes you as a seller might have is, what if I list my house and it doesn't sell? Well, would you like to know the odds of your house selling? This graph here shows you in blue properties that have sold, in orange properties that are under contract right now, in red properties that listed and didn't sell. And then green are ones that are still for sale right now. Now you can see this top one here shows the last 12 months of activity. Now looking at the numbers here, that gives you a 96% chance of selling. That is phenomenal. That is amazing. I mean, homes are selling at 2 homes per month and there's no homes available for sale right now. That shows you the odds are super in your favor. And it's pretty reflected actually in the next graph that shows you the average time before closed. So you imagine you put your house in the market and someone brings an offer in. In most cases, the contract is 30 to 45 days. So in this case, you can see here, the average days before close is 45 days. Homes are moving fast right now in your neighborhood. And the average close price is $433,000. That doesn't mean that that's where your average price would be, but it does show us that you can see here from anywhere from lower to higher, they're all selling pretty fast. Now, a couple here got a little bit longer out in the days to closed, but in most cases, they're all around this 45-day range. Now, the main thing that we want to look at with this is if it takes 45 days to close, we want to know how that affects our next answer, which is when is the best time for you to sell your house? Would you like to know what that is? Okay, so this graph here shows a pattern of when homes sold in your neighborhood. The blue areas here are the areas of momentum when more buyers and more activity were in your neighborhood. So you can see here that from February through June was the highest spike of activity. Now there was a little spike in November, but really this window here is the most combined selling activity area. So going back for a second, looking at the 45 days before close, you want to think about if you listed at a certain date, you have to look 45 days or a month and a half ahead. Do you fall in that window? Well, as of today, which is February 1st, pardon me, you can see that you would fall directly in that window. Again, the patterns are in your favor. So you're likely to sell your house, to sell it fast, and you're in the most active time. Now let me ask you, would you be willing to sell your house for market value? What is market value? Well, let's look at that next. In order to find market value, we first have to start and look at what has sold recently to establish kind of a base value that your home is in the eyes of recent buyers. So you can see here, in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of sales in your neighborhood. But now this sale kind of list, we want to look at specifically the homes that have sold in the last 6 months. This graph here shows you all 5 pricing factors. You can see on the left-hand side, there's the price of the property. On the bottom is total square footage. And then the blue dots on this graph represent homes that have closed in the last 6 months, specifically from August 13th until December 3rd, because nothing sold since then as of yet in 2022. So looking at this graph, you can see that this red line is the fair market value line. So do you know the square footage of your house? Okay, well, flipping back to this previous page, it was 3,376. here's a pen. Would you, for me, draw a line from your square footage approximately in the bottom up to that fair market value line? Okay, so what does the fair market value line tell you your house should be priced around? That's right, probably right around $485,000. Now that being said though, you can see that the dots, some of them fall right in the line, and some actually go above, some go below. So now that you've drawn that line on the graph, let's look at the dots or the homes that have sold right next to that, the closest ones, to see how well you match up to those. And let's take a look at this guy, because this guy's way above the line. So what are they doing to get that high above it, right? Okay, so look, this here shows us those addresses and what's going on in those. Now I looked at these, I looked at the MLS sheets, and I'd be glad to show you those MLS sheets. They're actually in the back of this CMA. But the main things that kind of stuck out to me, on this one that was way above here, you can see, it was a ranch. It was approximately about 300 square foot less than yours. But the main things that they had, they actually finished their basement fully. They had a wet bar, they added an extra bathroom, an extra bedroom, and they had a 3-car garage, plus the fully fenced in their backyard. So they had the whole kit and caboodle in the finished basement, which really pushed them above the line. Now looking at the one just to the right of that, where the text box is almost hidden here, 6849 Langland Street, you can see here, 3-car garage. It's a 2-story house, 3-bed, 3-bath, and the fenced-in yard is perfectly on the line. Okay, so 6900 Sumner Street, it's a ranch, it's a little bit bigger lot, 3-bed, 2-bath, 3-car garage, but their yard is not fenced in, which is what's pulling them down below that line. So, looking at your house and understanding that you have a fenced-in yard, but you don't have a 3-car garage, your basement is unfinished, and yours is a 3-bed, 2-bath, a 3-bed, 3-bath, where would you expect your house to fall in relation to that line? Yes, it would be a little bit below. Now, how far below is kind of a whole nother discussion, but it would be a little bit below. So we'd probably be in that 480 to 485 range. Now, let me ask you, 480 to 485, that sounds pretty good, right? I mean, considering I think that looking back at your past, you bought it considerably less, correct? Yes. Awesome. Now, I want to explain one little thing about the real estate market to you really fast. The way buyers search for homes, they don't necessarily search just for a price. They are using Zillow or Realtor.com, or they're using different searching mechanisms, and they're really searching for ranges. Right? So most people are not searching just for one specific price. And because of that, they're searching this range they're searching in, they're going to be seeing homes for sale in a kind of higher price and lower price than where we're going to be at. And so we want to look at how we compare to those and see whether or not we're at the right price, as well as if we can go up because there's not as much competition, or if we need to go down a little bit and be at that 480 range versus the 485 to make sure we're in a good competitive position. Do you understand that? Okay. So looking back at this graph here, what I went ahead and did is establish our competitive range from 450,000 to 500,000. That's probably the range of buyers that we're going to be competing for. Now, the reason I said that too is you can see that almost all these homes that have sold have been in that range. Sure, there's some way down here, but they're down at 2,000 square feet. And there's one oddball way out here, but you can see that they're almost 3,700 square feet, maybe a little more than that, so they're considerably larger. So, looking at that competitive range, I went ahead and did a search and created another graph looking at the homes that are for sale. The homes that are for sale right now in Wellington, in that range, you can see on this map as the green dots. You see there's a couple in your neighborhood, a couple across the highway, and then one way up there on Smoke Signal Way. Now, looking at all of those on a new graph, you can see them all here. Now, let me go ahead and jump back 1 second and explain before we get to that. We want to know what the market's doing momentum-wise. Well, we looked at the patterns beforehand. We're going to look at the market momentum. You can see that it favors us as sellers. And we have projected sales of 11 sold homes in the next 90 days. What that means is there's likely going to be 3 more sales because there's 8 under contract here, and there's 9 projected new, 2 that are currently showing. If that's one of us, we're going to be those 11 homes. 11 homes fighting for 3 spots. So we can be a little bit aggressive, but maybe we want to be kind of cautious to make sure the odds still stick with us in our favor. Now again, we're 96% on the odds of selling, so we're pretty favorable. But knowing that, now let's look at that graph. Looking at this graph here, you can see very clearly that the homes for sale are the green triangles and the orange are properties under contract. Now, before you talk about anything else, what's your main takeaway from this graph? That's right, there's not a lot for sale. Yes, there's only 2 properties for sale. Both of them are below 2,200 square feet. So looking at the actual under contract here around our square footage, which is above 3,000, without anything for sale, what would you say our competition is? You're right, there really isn't any competition right now. So in most cases, what we want to do is make sure we have competitive advantage. Now, if there's a home for sale that was out there, we want to try and beat them. But in this case, there isn't anything. So we have a built-in competitive advantage. So if you think about pricing here at that 485,000 range, we're going to have competitive advantage over basically everything in this quadrant up here. Why do I say that? The reason I say that is it's less square footage than us at a higher price, which means we have a greater value than that. Now, assuming that those standard contract can close, they don't matter as much. However, if one of them ends up coming back on the market or falling through, then we want to still have competitive advantage usually above that. So we can maneuver this guy and maneuver our price probably a little higher. So I would probably recommend at 490,000, we have competitive advantage over all of them. Now, because they're not on the market, however, we theoretically could go a little bit higher to 495 or even 500. Now, let me explain why I say 500. There's an idea called pricing on the bridge. So the idea is you have 2 buyers. You have one buyer searching one range, another buyer searching another range. And that bridge price is the overlap where they both end up seeing your house. So in many cases, when you think about these broad swaths we talked about earlier, buyers' eyes, there's many buyers that will search from 450,000 to 500,000. Others that will search from 500,000 to 550,000, which makes that 500,000 a very powerful bridge position. That bridge then enables more buyers to see us. So at 490,000, we have complete competitive advantage. At 495, we still do unless one of these comes off the market, comes back on the market because the contract fell through. However, at the moment, we still have competitive advantage. At 500,000, we have the bridge advantage. So what that means is anywhere in this 490 to 500,000 would be where I would recommend a price. Now, I'm a real estate agent, and I'm meant to give you great advice and give you great understanding of the market. However, the decision ends up on your shoulders. I want you to be the one to tell me your ultimate decision. So, knowing all the information and based on all the information provided, where would you like to expect your house to sell and list at? Wonderful choice. And with my marketing and our presentation, I believe we will sell this house fast, efficiently, and for great value. And there you go. That's the presentation. Again, we have additional resources if they want to take a look at the MLS sheets, but that's the presentation of the CMA and the actual takeaway from the pricing process. Again, this is a longer video. There's a couple stumbles here and there. Again, I forgot to mention the pond before I started talking about the scattergram in the positioning, and some practice for you will get you through this really easily. But that being said, it's a repeatable process, and I hope this video helps you understand how to use the Focus First software and how to use the resources to help you price homes accurately and efficiently. Again, there's going to be cases where this can be more confusing and the graph might not turn out as pretty or as easy as the first time, but it will work if you work the system. That's the beauty of a process. The process works as long as you just follow the steps. If you have problems or trouble, contact us at support@focusfirst.com or on our live support phone number. We're here to help, and we're here to empower you as real estate agents. Thanks for being here, and have a great day.